Thank you. Scott Ewing.
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Scott Ewing. I served in the Army as a scout from 2004 through 2007 and deployed to Iraq with the 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment in March of 2005. I spent most of the year there in Tal Afar, a city of about 200,000 in the northwest region near Mosul. In March 2006, we returned from our deployment, and President Bush made a speech at the City Club in Cleveland in which he talked about our specific deployment. And in that speech, basically said that we were finally making progress in Iraq based on what we had done. I'm going to talk about 3 issues: civilian casualties, detainees, and house searches. During my deployment, I saw far more civilians injured and killed than insurgents. When I say civilians, I mean men, women, and children who are not suspected in any way of being involved in wrongdoing. I also personally saw more innocent civilians injured or killed by American forces than by the enemy. One particularly memorable incident occurred after we raided 2 houses and found no one there. Everyone thought we were going home, but the vehicle stopped again and we were told to get out and go to a nearby house. I assumed that we were going to search it, but when we went in through the front gate, I noticed that there were already other American soldiers there, a mortar platoon from our troop. There were 6 Iraqi men against the wall, and as I rounded the car that was in the driveway, we saw several middle-aged women sprawled out on the cement, covered in blood. It looked like somebody had opened up on them with a machine gun. What we found out shortly thereafter is that one of our Apache helicopters had shot high explosive rounds into their front yard. And so we started treating them with bandages. The first woman that I got to had shrapnel, had penetrated her head. She was still alive, but she died shortly thereafter. The other women were very badly wounded. We got medical supplies from the Bradleys and tried to bandage their wounds. Two of the injured women were laying next to each other over in the back of the Bradley, and a little boy about 9 years old came up to me, pointed to his chest, and there was a blood spot on it. So I kind of looked and listened to his breathing to see if his lungs had been punctured, and they hadn't. So I set him back in the back of the Bradley next to the 2 women, and they were all taken to an aid station, which was just outside the city. There were numerous other events, incidents that involved civilian casualties. I don't have time to go into them all, but this incident illustrates the first serious difference between what I saw in Iraq and what is seen back home. There's been virtually no explicit reporting by the mainstream media of civilian casualties caused by U.S. troops in Iraq. Anytime a suicide bomber kills civilians, it is highly publicized. But from my personal experience in Tal Afar, the number of Iraqis killed or injured by our forces far outnumbered those killed by insurgents or suicide bombers. I'm going to talk about detainees next. Colonel McMaster went through great lengths, it seems, to ensure that detainees were not abused the way they had been in previous units. In some ways, I think his efforts were successful, but this is little consolation to those Iraqis who were detained without good reason. In one case, we detained three men just because they were running. We were told to go, that a helicopter had seen them running through the street. They went into their house, and when we went there, we found nothing. There was no evidence that they had done anything wrong, and we detained them anyway. In another case, an older man approached us while we were on a dismounted patrol seeking help, medical help. He had been shot through the foot in some other kind of random fire in the city, which happened all the time. 4 of his friends joined him in the front yard, and we asked them, we questioned them, asked them what they were doing. They said they were in town for a funeral. And so we used a chemical explosives detection kit called X-spray on their hands. One is supposed to take a piece of paper and swab their hands with it and spray that on the paper, but nobody had read the instructions. So the staff sergeant who was with us sprayed the X-spray all over their hands. Of course, everything's dusty, so it changed colors slightly to brown, and on that basis we brought them into the TOC and detained them. When we got there, the JAG attorney told us that we couldn't detain people based on X-spray as evidence, as primary evidence, but said we'll take care of it anyway. So in the end, we basically, I filled out a sworn statement as honestly as I could, but I was also asked to sign some short forms. And as I signed the short forms, I realized, well, maybe there's something on the back, and I decided to look after about the third one. And on the back, the staff sergeant who was with us had written that these men admitted to engaging the Jolok tribe, which was a tribe that was we had an alliance with, in hostilities, and they had not made any such claim. We had no evidence that they were engaging the Joloks in hostilities, and yet on that basis we detained the men, and that involved a commissioned officer who was a JAG attorney in doing that. The third thing I want to talk about is house searches. Can I have the first slide? You can advance the slides slowly as I talk. Our squadron commander, Lieutenant Colonel Hickey, was quoted in the Washington Post in September of 2005 as saying, "If we go in there and tear these people's homes apart, we lose these people." And this idea made a lot of sense to me. It's consistent with counterinsurgency doctrine, which states that the goal of the counterinsurgent is to win the support of the population that otherwise might support the insurgency. In September of 2005, we conducted a large-scale mission involving thousands of soldiers and cleared the entire city over a 2-week period of time. During this time, we were told to search aggressively, and soldiers smashed windows, broke open and threw furniture, scattered the contents of drawers onto the floor, stepped on dishes, and left graffiti in Iraqis' homes. And I have to warn the cameras that some of the graffiti that is going to appear is vulgar in nature. All of this happened under the supervision of our platoon leader and the platoon sergeant. I've since talked with Lieutenant Colonel Hickey about this, and he reiterated that ransacking people's homes was not authorized and was not consistent with their goals. You can continue through the slides until you get to the last one. So these are homes that we searched. And this was typical of searches. So people were either outside or they came home to homes like this. This is a house that was burning during this large-scale mission in September. And keep going through the slides. And you can end it with the last one. And maybe go to the next one so we don't leave that up. There's a clear difference between the image projected through his words in the media and what really happened. Although this is not the kind of behavior that's going to make the headlines, it is incredibly important for several reasons. First of all, Iraqis put a huge premium on honor and respect, and trashing people's homes did not win us friends in Tal Afar. Additionally, from talking with other soldiers and veterans, these kinds of searches have been commonplace throughout the occupation and all over the country. Loyalty is viewed as disproportionately owed to one's unit, without regard to the behavior of the soldiers and the leaders within it. The initial assignment of loyalty is meant to create a functional team, but when serious problems with adherence to Army regulations or bad tactical decisions are made, this loyalty speciously serves to prevent disgrace and embarrassment. Mistakes are hidden rather than corrected, and patterns of misbehavior are left unrecognized. Root causes are rarely addressed as a result. Thank you for having us again.